We're here to help you navigate your business growth with strategic conversations and insights from experts in multiple industries. Welcome to Wayfinding Growth.
This episode of Wayfinding Growth is brought to you by Sprocket Talk. If you're ready to take your HubSpot experience to a whole new level, you need to join Sprocket Talk as a free VIP member. That's right, free. Tutorials, courses, training, HubSpot updates, and so much more. Head to sprockettalk.com/WG to join the movement and get an exclusive Wayfinding Growth deal. All right, Wayfinders, here we are. Wayfinding Growth. Welcome to the show, Season 2, Episode 27. We are wrapping up this season with something that I've had on my mind for quite a while since Remington first just in passing referenced this whole thing of growing up on a boat and knowing you and how just like unique your perspective is on some stuff. Like, did it all come from just being a pirate? So that's what we're talking about today. What growing up on a boat taught you about business. So first, let's start with, you grew up on a boat?
I did.
Heck?
So my dad and my mom, she probably gets most of the credit. She was the admiral. My dad was the captain. But
is that how it works in most marriages? At least
pretty
happy
much,
ones?
but like this could really sink you.
That's fair.
So from the age of, I think it was 7 to 14. 7 to 14, my brother's 4. From the ages 7 to 14, I grew up on a sailboat, a 30-foot sailboat in the Caribbean. We traveled from Bermuda, which is where we were living at the time, all the way down to Trinidad in the Antilles, and touched Venezuela. I was the only one that jumped off the boat to walk the dog. And we did that, dodging hurricanes each season for 7 years.
Go ahead. I'm making mental notes. You had a dog?
Yeah, we had a dog. Yep. Her name was Sandy. And whenever she needed to go for a walk, we threw her overboard, and she would swim and go to the bathroom. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Man.
So, but it was a pretty unique experience. It was funny because I was young at the time. I was 7. My brother was 4, and my sister was 1.5.
So you got kids at home now. Carter's just turned 3 not too long ago,
right.
And a baby.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having them on a boat?
Oh, they'd be chained to the center of the boat. Like,
right?
I mean, we pretty much were, but in a good way, not in a slave way.
That's fair.
But so everyone has multiple point harness that is attached to something when the boat's underway, and we traveled. I think it was like 21 islands total that we went through, and it was really all we knew. Like this sounds a little pretentious, but like the water, we grew up in Bermuda for the most part of our lives before that, and then we traveled the Caribbean, so like it was normal to be able to see 40-50 feet deep in the water. And then when we didn't like our neighbors, we moved. We just pulled up anchor and went. But I was the oldest, and my mom had to take care of the younger ones, and so basically I'm the one that helped my dad navigate everywhere. I was first mate. And so he taught me how to navigate. He taught me how to do math by map. Latitude and longitude is just numbers, and it's essentially, everything we had to figure out was figured out backwards. So I take that a lot into business now. But it taught a lot of lessons. One, having to have people count on you at an early age. Like I was 7 and I was navigating a boat for shifts so that my dad could go to sleep.
Oh yeah, on your own.
Yeah,
not just I'm going to show you, son. We're going to hold hands and do this.
Like this is how
you had to take over.
You got to make the compass point here, make sure this goes, and holler if you hear anything.
As a 7, 8, 9-year-old, that's amazing. Like that's.
Yeah. Of course, he trusted me more at the end when I was closer to 14. But
sure.
But he had to sleep when we were doing crossings.
Yeah. So what else do you think? I just feel like that's such a unique. You said it a minute ago. It's a unique experience.
Yeah.
But what a different perspective. Like, we often are so much victims of where we grew up and how we, I went to business school and I did this and I did that, blah, blah, blah. And my mentor taught me this. Like, you've got such a unique perspective, and you've brought that to business.
Tried. Yeah.
You've tried to. But also, like, a creativity, too. I mean, like, working alongside you so often, your mind just works differently. Right. You'll drop something in my lap, and I'm like, wait a minute, time out. Do you think that's a big part of that as well? Do you just
so? And this is not me riffing necessarily on the structured school system, but there's a lot to like real life learning. I know a lot of people that have never traveled outside the United States.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cultures in different cities, much less different countries.
Right.
We had the opportunity, living on the boat and I was an entrepreneur from like the very beginning, which we can dig into that in a bit. But I got to see a culture, like for instance, Guadeloupe is a French island, and there's an island called Ile-de-Saints. I love Ile-de-Saints because of the French bread and the smell when you're in the harbor when they're baking bread in the morning, right? So just like that cultural reference of like what real authentic French bread is. I've never been to France, but I've pretty much like we paid with francs, we did all that stuff, and I was like 8 or 9 at the time, and then a 1-day boat trip, to the next island. It was Dominica, and Dominica is, English speaking, and the tour guides and stuff didn't have shoes. Like we gave him shoes, and he gave us a tour of the entire island. And so, like when you think about like the different cultures, like the U.S. is lucky because we've got all these different states and like Northeast, Southeast, whatever. You go to Key West, it's like a different country.
Yeah.
But then in the Caribbean, it's very much that way as well. It's just they're not unified under one way of thinking. So it gave a unique perspective, and so I always thought outside. But one of the most glaringly obvious ways that I realized that like I don't think the way other people do is when I came back to the U.S. in '97. 8th grade was my first year of public school, which is rough for anyone that's been through 8th grade.
Middle school of itself is hard.
Yeah.
And then coming from okay.
Like, have you seen the movie Bubble Boy?
Yeah.
Real life. But like I went into 8th grade not knowing what a Ford truck was. I never really heard about baseball. Everything was cricket.
Yeah.
And so like I remember my second class in 8th grade was PE, and I went into the ballroom because they said go get a football, and I'm the only one that came out of the dark ballroom with a soccer ball. Right.
That's a football.
And so it's just like a cultural. It's just you don't realize the cultural inferences and stuff that that people have. So.
Because like your mom's British, right?
Yeah, mom's British, dad's Canadian.
So even that in and of itself is another layer of
right.
that. Okay, fair.
Yeah. So like I eat with my fork upside down to most Americans.
Okay.
Yeah. I call my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
She corrects me if I don't.
No, that's funny.
Yeah.
No, it's mum. All right.
Mom. Yep. So that was a lot, just being open to those different experiences allowed for perspective. And I think a lot of times when you make decisions, you have to take perspectives into account or account for those perspectives. Which
is cool as on the employee side. It's very interesting to me then to hear that and to know that that's how you think, but then also knowing that our clients get that. I mean, this podcast has never been about like work with Impulse because we're amazing. But in reality, like that's a perspective that you get when you work with us as an agency, right. That you're not just, well, I'm going to follow what everybody else is doing. I mean, best practices are in place for certain, like, okay, it's fine for certain things. But in reality, I mean, we're coming at it because the whole team is built around your perspective as you're 1/16 of the team. But
I'll put the rails down.
But yeah. But you've built this team with that different perspective. And so that's what you get when you work with Impulse, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Like it's such a different agency because of that. You said something earlier about unpacking entrepreneur from the beginning. Why do you think that is?
So when you're on a boat, you can fish, or you can swim, or you can fish, or you can swim. Like there's not much, right? So it's a family of 5 with a dog, and the dog counts on 30 feet. On a 30-foot sailboat, and so.
So you say a 30-foot sailboat.
Yep.
Like I kind of have a picture of that, but how big is that really?
So a minivan is about, it's depending on the minivan, and you're like 18 to 21 feet.
Wow. So a minivan and a half, maybe 2 at the most.
Yep.
For 5 people and a dog.
Right. And so now, so let's say it's 2 minivans, just for the sake of argument. Now, cut triangles in the front and the back of those minivans because a boat has the bow and the stern.
Yeah.
So like. At its widest point, the boat was 11 feet wide, and of course, the narrowest point was a couple inches.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, the only time to get away, like you could get an argument and you had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. On the other side, if you got punished, you usually went overboard. right? And
Walk the plank.
Yeah, no, legit. Like it usually had an oar behind it. And I love my dad. He only had to do that a couple times. But but things are serious on a boat. Like if you don't listen when someone says something, like I'll be walking through, and hell, with my own son, like I'll be walking through and someone will, like, I'll tell Carter to stop. And like most people will say, like, if they see their kids walking towards the road, like it gets dangerous, right? Well, that's like all the time on a boat.
Sure, yeah.
Right? You could drown. Imagine like having kids around a pool.
Right. 100% of the time that you can't get away from.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine being on a float in the pool.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot at stake, and God bless my parents for being able to like handle that. But at the same time, there are just things that we had to do, and like listening was absolutely one of them. And so, you know, that was a big thing. But there was also like a lot of trust, you know, like, hell, most communities, you can't go outside and just let your kids roam around. Like my dad let me go to land and hang out like where all the dinghies were when people were going ashore, because that's just like how it was.
Yeah.
You don't have to check in and all that. But,
sure, yeah.
But entrepreneurship, to actually bring it back.
Yeah.
So we only had a certain amount of money that he'd give us to do stuff with, and we had very limited time where we could use that money to do anything. And I learned a lot about like currency. So like EC money was the money at the time. They use euros quite a bit now, but like EC was $2.65 for every $1 US. And we were in Trinidad, it was $9 for every $1 US.
Wow.
So you think like a 12-year-old going to get a bag of Cheetos, which we loved Cheetos. It wasn't a normal thing, right? But like go get Cheetos in Trinidad, and I remember learning firsthand about currency exchange because I handed $1 to the teller or the person at the counter, got my Cheetos, and got back $8.50.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, what? Right? Now, it was still worth $1, and my dad explained that. But like all of the life experiences that we had really started to teach me about that. So then we get to some of those islands where EC was more valuable than other stuff. I saw where, the people on the boats typically had US dollars because it was a more even valuation. And so there's a lot of times where those dinghies would be stolen because they bring the boat up, they go get groceries, and they leave the boat there, and it's just tied off.
Yeah.
And so, I would just hang out at the dock, and then I'd be like, I'll watch your boat for you, and people would pay me. And like I got paid. I did it just because like I cared about other people's boats and I cared about our boat. That was actually the starting reason. Like I was like, I'm gonna stay with the boat so no one takes it. At like 12. And then someone's like, I was like, I can watch your boat for you, and he like threw me $3. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of Cheetos.
That's a lot of Cheetos.
Right? But
that's what a 12-year-old cares about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started doing that. So every island we go to, like I'd just hang out on the dock, let my parents go do stuff, and like I'd help them sometimes. But like I started, like I remember my dad was like, yeah, you could do that. And then I came back, and he came back and he's like, did you have fun? I was like, yeah. And I like showed him all the money, and it was like, at that point it was like $26 or something. But like that's more than I got in allowance in like 2 years.
Right.
And he's like, no, you didn't. And then so from there, I remember in St. Martin, they have like craft shows and stuff where the islanders will like sell to the tourists. Yeah. Like all you need is a bucket and a table. And so we came, when we do the route in the Caribbean, like you go from St. Martin down to Venezuela and you come back like 6 or 8 months later. So I knew that I was like, that guy's made a lot of money with leather products. And so I learned how, like while we're sitting on the boat doing nothing, to do leather. Like I made lighter holders and like cigarette holders and knife pouches and stuff and belts. And I went back and I remember selling I sold out in like an hour and a half. And it's again right next to the dock, but doing that kind of stuff. So that was like 12 and 13. And then as we started, moving around, then my brother started helping. So it was he officially was probably my first employee. But,
nice.
But it's just one of those things where that was just kind of ingrained, and that's just what it was. My dad was an entrepreneur before, so he was very open and free to let us do that. Mm-hmm. My mom's very artistic, so yeah, it's that was when I was 12, and now when we think about business, unique perspectives, trying stuff out, not being afraid,
Mm-hmm.
and just looking for opportunity. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me too that, I think about, okay, if I wanted to go do that right now, I would sit down for a few years and try to make money ahead of time,
Sure.
have all the stuff, have a savings, blah, blah, blah. And it sounds like you just lived. You just lived a life. That's what you did.
Right.
Made some money when you needed it.
I took that $26. I took that $26 that I made at the dock, and I spent it on leather.
Yep.
And then I had leather for a couple months, and then when I came back, they were pieces of things, and I sold them, and and we just kind of went from there. But never borrowed any money or anything, even that young, right? It was just like, I'll go help someone do something. So everything's been rooted in work, which is not something that's very typical around here.
No, not at all.
I say around here in the U.S., not to mean any offense to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm American too.
That's So what is it? Gosh, I mean, how did your parents even get to that point? That's what they wanted to do. You said you grew up in Bermuda?
Bermuda,
you said?
yeah. So my grandmother was a Ziegfeld Follies girl. My grandfather on my dad's side was a stuntman in California.
Okay.
So they retired in Bermuda. And so when my grandmother started getting older, my dad moved the family from Florida, and I was at the age of 4 out to Bermuda. So we were out in Bermuda. And then after that, we, he had this dream. He had the boat for years. I think my dad got Brittany, which is the name of the boat, same year my brother was born, and he's 3 years behind me. And so then when we moved, so we've had the boat probably 7 years, he was like, you know what? I want to travel the world. And he goes, we'll start with the Caribbean. My mom said yes, I guess. I'm not really sure about the coercion back then, but she jumped in, and we loaded up the boat, and there was like a lot more prep than normal. And my dad told us that, like, he's like, pack a bag. Like our closet, if you will, was a pillowcase, and you put all your clothes in your pillowcase. That was also your pillow. And we left. And so it was like, yeah, we're going to go to the beach. He wasn't wrong. But it was not the normal route.
Yeah.
And that first trip from Bermuda to St. Martin was 11 and a half days at sea.
Wow. Man, I love water. Like, I just want to go.
Lot, though. It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, and there was 30 foot seas. So the boat's 30 feet. 30-foot seas. And I remember, we've got a photo. I'll have to try and find it. I'll ask my mom about it. But there's a picture of my mom at the helm, and something's uneasy about the photo, and you don't realize what it is. And it's because the horizon line of where the water is above you in all directions.
Oh.
Right?
Like down inside of
We're inside the wave, and so the water's really high. That was the roughest trip that we had. And I remember my dad jokes about this all the time, so he'll be proud I'm bringing it up, is we tried the single sideband radios, like where all the boats communicate and talk about weather patterns before they had like satellite radios and stuff. And on the single sideband radio, my dad would talk to, his name was Herb, and he was a guy that like looked at weather patterns and relayed the information. And there was this huge storm that was essentially behind us the whole time. And he's like, can we do anything for you guys on Brittany? And like, I remember yelling like, pizza would be great. Right? 11 days at sea.
Yeah.
So imagine like not leaving your house for 11 days with your kids. Like stuff goes sideways maybe. But my parents handled it, and like we didn't die.
Yeah.
But there was, a lot of lessons in that first 11 days, and then the rest of it was a piece of cake.
Oh yeah, get it over early on. The next 7 years, like that was no big deal.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest lesson in business that you've taken from that and that you continue to use today?
So it was learning. So my parents very much were, because we were homeschooled, or I joke boat schooled. Right?
Yeah, right.
My parents very much were helping my brother and sister learn. And like at that point, I was towards the end, I was dealing with like algebra and stuff like that. And my parents didn't know too much about algebra because that wasn't really something that they needed to do in school. And my dad gave me the answer book, and he's like, figure it out. And so that made me solve problems backwards. Yeah. When I got to the U.S. and it started in 8th grade, I actually failed my first 2 math classes because they wanted me to show my work the way that they say come up with the answer, right? And I just figured it out by knowing the answer.
Yeah.
So like I always did a lot of stuff in my head. I have a photographic memory. I'm blessed with that. So like I can illustrate and imagine a lot of those things, but I had to figure everything out backwards. So when you were talking about earlier, like, oh, like Remington will talk about a problem, then suddenly he has an answer. He drops something like that's really where that comes from. So I've always just looked at things backwards and tried to backward analyze them.
All right. Very cool, man. I can just imagine being out in the middle of the ocean, no lights around.
Right.
Just, yeah.
It's actually really nice until you hear like a rumble of an engine and you don't see anything. And then that means that there's a ship really close.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of close calls like that. But, yeah.
Man, what a cool perspective. What a great way to end the season. Any last advice for anybody that needs to think differently in business?
Yeah, just flip your expectations upside down. Like if you're trying to solve a problem, like what is the problem? Like how did the problem, just look at it backwards. I think a lot of time like we don't invert things the way we look at the problem, but we don't look at like what the outcome of the problem was or like how it got there. So like inverting is usually, David Cancel even talks about that, power of inversion. But yeah, invert the problems and understand perspectives. Like, we talk about all the time, like the story I'm telling myself or like what's the real story? Like, is it mine or is it theirs? Like, there's so many different perspectives out there that you've really got to understand them if you're going to communicate effectively. And then sometimes you just got to do the work.
Yeah, do the work. I like that. Awesome, man. This has been a great season. I appreciate you opening up the Impulse book.
It's been great, man. It's great therapy, too.
And it's been fun this week being in-house.
Yeah.
So that was good. Next season we're talking about experience, kind of in a general term, nothing specific, just experience. We've got David Meerman Scott has joined us.
So much fun.
Yeah, he was awesome. And then we've got some other ones coming up. Michael Stelzner was on that we recorded, and so it's a good season coming up. Hope you enjoyed this season. Send us an email what you love or don't love about it. Be sure to subscribe, all that good stuff. Yeah, man, and share the hell out of it. There you go. Season 2, Wayfinding Growth is done. Cheers.
Toodles.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please share it. Post it, tweet it, gram it, email a friend. Give the gift of knowledge to someone you know that could benefit from it. And if you really loved it, please consider leaving a rating and written review on your podcast player of choice. And as always, go to wayfindinggrowth.com for resources and past episodes. Remember, we're here to help you navigate your business growth with strategic conversations and insights from experts in multiple industries. Thank you for listening to Wayfinding Growth.